There we go. So we're recording. We have been talking about why it's important to start with the poetry, right? So not only will it make all the difference when you put it to the music, it gets so much better. It is the biggest stumbling block. Yesterday, we spent hours, 2 hours doing a libretto read of Elixir of Love. So all sitting around the table, not discussing subtext or the story or the characters or what does Adina really think, but just trying to get the poetic form and the Italian diction, correct and flowing in Elixir of Love. And if you can't just look at the words and read the words, what makes you think that we should attack the music as well? So we have kind of a 6-pronged process, and we're going to go through this process together with an actual recitative from Finta Giardiniera. How many of you know Finta Giardiniera? That would be one more person than me. I do not know Finta Giardiniera that well, but I know some of the pieces. It's a great opera. So, number one thing you have to do in order to find let me just make sure before I start this, I have my answers. Rogi is Ramiro, Troy is Podesta, Phoenix is Serpeta, and we have Mira, rehearsal pianist. Great, thank you. Okay, so happy that we're actually doing a recitative from the show that they're able to do in Michigan. So number one is find the libretto. So you want to find the libretto, not just any libretto. So if I go here to Finta Giardiniera libretto, I don't know what might come up, right? I can go here. There's lots of stuff here. I'm not sure if any of this is going to have librettos or at all, but what you often find is that the libretto is presented in a form that isn't exactly, I think that's his name, might not be his name. Oh, there it is. No, go back. There we go. This book that people love, right? It presents the Mozart librettos with a decent translation. Let me see if I can. This thing, it looks very cute. Looks like it's something we all need. It's like when I go to buy wine, half the time I buy it based on what the label looks like. That looks like a very nice book to have. But the problem with that book is that it presents the recitatives as prose, right? Which is a fine idea, I guess, because that might be how you experience it. Except if you look at this, what we'll learn is that this is not prose, this is poetry. Yeah? So I can close that. So if you think about every old-timey story, think of the Iliad, the Odyssey, Epic of Gilgamesh, the entire book of Isaiah in the Bible tells a story, but is written in poetry. It is written in verse form. And if you imagine if you took E.E. Cummings and just strung it all along beside itself, we couldn't imagine doing that. Or, Emily Dickinson or D.J. Opperman, whoever. So whatever you have, the oldest way of telling stories was through poetry. We've kind of lost that. But when we're singing an opera, we are, until, Verdi at least, singing something that was written in a very strict poetic form. There's a very useful website called Libretti d'Opera. It's what this is from. So if I go here, librettidopera.it or librettidopera.it as in Italy. So this site is in Italian completely and is not the most either user-friendly or cute thing. So if you go here, you have to look through all kinds of things. So what is easier to do is to type in Finta Giardiniera Libretti d'Opera PDF, and it'll come up right here. Same thing with, I don't know, what's your favorite opera? in Italian?
La nozze di Figaro.
Le nozze di Figaro. There it is, nozze fig. At this point, I know all the shortcuts. If I search for Eldam, what do you think we're going to get? Elisir d'amore. So what we find here this is the Elixir libretto. The things you want to look for is the arias and the ensembles are in the middle of the page. First recit is here. And how is it aligned? To the left, yeah? We get back, this recit or aria. And then this is the first duet between Amorino and Adina, and it's indented, yeah? So we see that. We don't see anything that looks like prose, yeah? So you can also find older versions. Elixir is a good example because there's going to be an old libretto of this. I can't find an old libretto of Finta Giardiniera online, or at least not in the time that I had. But if I want to, for example, imagine that you're singing Una furtiva lagrima, right? I could, for example, search for an internal line. Why an internal line? Why would I not want to search for una furtiva lagrima? Because it'll give me 5 million results, right? But if I say quelle festose giovani, I'm still going to get a lot of results, but I'm going to go, now it's taking me already to Elixir of Love. I'm going to go here, full view, so I can see the whole thing. You can also sort for any time. So I want something published in the 19th century. Yeah, I want to find something that looks really old. And what do we see here? The same thing, right? Thank God we live in the age of Google. And here we are at the bottom of Africa looking at Italian recitative published in 1839 in Italy, okay? So you see here, Una furtiva lagrima is an aria. It's left aligned or indented? Indented. And after it is a recitative, it's on the side. Same thing through the whole show, yeah? So what we're looking for is something that represents this strict form, which we'll learn more about in a second, in a modern form, or you can use the old form. I quite like using the old books. It makes me feel, I don't know, antique or authentic or something. So when we printed the book, we chose to print old pages from old books in them, yeah? Because it's a connection to the past. They thought it was important enough to publish the libretto of Elixir of Love in 1839 so that people could read it, right? Now we do Elixir of Love. Most of us sing it for people who don't understand it if we do it in Italian. So we want to make sure that we understand it as well as we can. So that is Libretti d'Opera. This is also Google Books, how to do that. Number 2, finding the poetic meter. So all Italian recitative is in a form called versi sciolti. Everybody say versi sciolti. Versi sciolti. So when you are all famous opera singers and some conductor tries to tell you something, there are a couple of words you can throw at them. One is versi sciolti, but maestro, it's the versi sciolti. Yeah, don't you think it's the versi sciolti? And they'll say, I have no idea what you're talking about, right? So versi sciolti. Now, sciogliere is an Italian verb meaning to break or to loosen or to free. Like it'll come up a lot of times with the word le catene. Sciogliere le catene is like to break out of your chains, yeah? So what is it free of? It's free of rhyme, but it's written in 7 and 11 syllable lines. In America and apparently in South Africa, though I've not seen it, is 7-Eleven, or you've seen it on TV. We have a convenience store called 7-Eleven, so it should be easy to remember. So versi sciolti is written in a strict meter of either 7 or 11 syllable lines, but does not rhyme. Rhyming couplets come at the end. I made a presentation out of a longer sheet earlier today. So it will close with a rhyming end, but as a rule, it doesn't rhyme. And when you find this poetic meter, when you're going through, the main rule you want to find is that Italian basically sounds like this, and that is why they put the shadow vowels in. So they do not want to put two long syllables next to each other, yeah? So pizza, pasta, macaroni, okay, whatever you want to say. But, so when you're going and you read, so if we read, for example, a first take through of Ma nipote mia cara, okay? If I don't know that this word is nipote, if I think it's maybe nipote, yeah? If I go ma nipote mia, it doesn't seem right. Ma nipote mia cara, non mi seccate più, che posso farvi nello stato presente. Okay, so without going into every detail of all of this, let's count together the syllables in the first 3 lines. Okay, using your fingers, because it's hard to count in your head numbers while you're saying words out loud. Is it big enough for everybody to see? Okay, yes. This. Anybody else hate the little Zoom share thing? It's always in the wrong place. Okay, ready, and ma nipote mia cara, non mi seccate più, che posso farvi. How many is that? 11. Nello stato presente. 7. So we have 7, 11, and 7 again. Now let's talk about this. So when you say the word mia, how many syllables do you feel like there are? 2, right? And they are 2 if the word just exists by itself. Io, mio, tuo, suo, right? All those kind of words, those vowels happen at separate times. But anytime vowels in a word like mia, or if we look here, signori allegramente, even across words, vowels combine to form syllables, okay? So if we count this, ma nipote mia cara. Now, imagine for a second that that the words were flipped and were ma nipote cara mia, how many syllables would we have? Ma nipote cara mia, 8, but that's not allowed, right? You'll get pulled over.
So Mia counts as 2 at the end.
Right, Mia count, when Mia is at home on Mia's couch, not being looked or not being watched by anyone, Mia is 2 syllables, right? But in the middle of the line, it counts as 1 for the same reason that in this line, signori allegramente has how many syllables? 7. And where is the combination? Right there, yeah? This is if you want to know the very fancy name for it, which you don't need to, but it is si na le fe.
We should know the fancy name for it. Like people who are doing heart surgery have to know the fancy names of the arteries. You can know
Sina le fe. Everybody say sina le fe. That looks a little bit better than that, but so we'll just save those drawings. Thank you.
Somebody here in South Africa says that sounds like a good name for a dog.
Sina le fe. No. We'll stick with Buffy. Buffy in and Buffy Tuya. So we're gonna go. So we have who. Okay. We have a Podestà. We have a Ramiro. We have a Serpetta. And Leonardo. Great, thank you. So if Troy and Rogi and Serpetta comes in a bit. So if you will unmute, does anybody here want to be Nardo?
What kind of?
Let's have someone from this room be Nardo. Anybody? Great. Okay. You just have to speak up. Okay. Okay. Come a little bit closer because we want to make sure that they can hear. All the way in the United States.
You can even sit there on the stool next to them. Go sit with Derek.
Quickly. Time is of the essence. At 8 o'clock, I'm going home. No, okay. So you can either read Nardo from there or Nardo from here, whatever you want. Okay, so Troy is the Podestà. So what I want you to do is, I'm not going to stop you on pronunciation or whatever right now. I just want you to read through and see if the rhythm of the language will help you find your feet.
Okay. Ma nipote mia cara, non mi seccate più, che posso farvi nello stato presente.
Signori allegramente son guariti da pazzi e appena son in senno ritornati e in pace e in allegria si son sposati.
Che dici?
O tradimento!
Oh, che gran sorte!
Mi son tolta una spina.
Okay, so let's go back. I'm going to get rid of Sinalefe. Okay, Sinalefe. Okay, so if you, I want them to be able to see. There we go. Here we go. And your name is?
Anga.
Anga. So make sure that we keep, when we read these combinations together, so that we get Signori allegramente son guariti di pazzi e appena son in senno ritornate che in pace e in allegria si son sposati. Let's all count this line together. Che in pace e in allegria si son sposati. So you see all of this business. No, just from C. No, just from C. Is one syllable. Whoa! Okay. So now one more time. Anga, will you read Signori allegramente?
Signori allegramente.
Good.
Son guariti la pazzi.
Li pazzi.
Li pazzi.
Son guariti di pazzi. So we want to keep every long syllable long. Yeah, one more time.
Son guariti li pazzi.
Good.
E appena son il senno ritornati.
Good. Resist the urge to stop. E appena son in senno. Italians are very lazy. They even add consonants between era marti to make it easier to say. E appena son in senno ritornati.
E appena son in senno
Yeah,
ritornati.
you want to go son in senno.
Son
Son
in
in senno. Yeah. E appena.
E appena son in senno ritornati.
Good. Keep going.
Che in pace.
Ooh, che in or che
Che in pace e in allegria si son sposati.
Let's all find the long syllables. Che in pace e in allegria si son sposati. So che in pace e in allegria si son sposati. All right. Okay. One more time from me, ma nipote mia cara.
Ma nipote mia cara, non mi seccate più, che posso farvi nello stato presente.
Signori allegramente. sono guariti i pazzi e appena sono in senno ritornati, che in pace e in allegria si sono spostati.
Che dici?
Un tradimento.
Oh, che gran sorte.
Mi son tolta una spina.
Good. So, Phoenix, what happens there?
So it's two vowels, and I know that I wanted to emphasize both the A and the U because they're vowels.
So, if we have the long syllables there, mi son tolta una spina. So the long syllable here, tol, says to this, yeah? Mi son tolta una spina.
Mi son tolta una spina.
Yeah, doesn't she sound much more Italian now?
So that rule is steadfast. You cannot choose to emphasize two things next to each other. You simply can't. It's not an option.
Good. Ecco la mia sposina, ecco la mia violante.
Come?
Good. Sandrina, who's going to read Sandrina?
Can you see me?
Be brave. We came all the way from Maine to teach you.
Okay, Sandrina.
Ok.
Cessi ogni dubbio.
Cessi ogni dubbio dell'esser mio cangiai
Good.
con Roberto, mio servo e nome è stato. Ne vogli mai svelarmi, sol per far col mio sposo una dolce vendetta.
Good job. Marchesina, vi prego a perdonarmi. Io sono la rea, io vi tramai la morte. Io te sei non più.
Amica.
So he
What?
non più amica.
Yeah. Non più amica.
Yeah, you want to go non più amica. So even commas don't count for now. Non più amica.
Non più amica.
Quit. Amica. Non più. Here we go. I have no clue what happened. No, I do not want to set up professional audio. I just want to keep going. Sorry, non più amica.
Non più amica, cessate e un caro abbraccio. Conoscervi vi farà l'affetto mio.
Good. So let's all remember. So if you see a written accent in Italian, where's the stress of the word? On that one. So, conoscervi farà l'affetto mio. So if we read from this, Marchesina, vi prego a perdonarmi, io son la rea, io vi tramai la morte, non più amica, cessate un caro abbraccio, conoscervi farà l'affetto mio. It can be quite satisfying once you find the way to go. Okay, Arminda says, se piace al signor zio, il fedele Ramiro.
Anch'io se si contenta. Vorrei, sorry, I had to mute myself really quick. I'm so sorry.
One more time.
Thank you. Anch'io se si contenta vorrei.
Bene, ho capito. Vostro sposo è Ramiro e tuo sia Nardo.
Good, Troy. Can you give me more long syllables? Bene, ho capito. Vostro sposo è Ramiro.
Bene, ho capito. Vostro sposo è Ramiro.
I hear vostro sposo è Ramiro instead of vostro sposo è Ramiro. Let's count those syllables. Vostro sposo è Ramiro.
Vostro sposo è Ramiro.
It is so important that you find these long syllables. Otherwise, the language is unintelligible. And if you don't sing the syllables long enough, the pianist or the harpsichordist or whomever is playing with you has no opportunity to put down a chord. Yeah? I was once playing with a singer. I was like, I'm never going to be able to put down a chord because there's no long syllable. Yeah? So I can't help them with the harmony because they don't give me a chance. So one more time. Bene, ho capito.
Bene, ho capito. Vostro sposo è Ramiro, e tuo sia Nardo.
Good. Oh, bravo.
Di più bramar non so.
Questo è piacere.
Di più bramar non so, questo è piacere.
Ah,
One more time. Di più, Rogi.
Di più bramar non so.
questo è piacere.
Goda chi vuol godere. Si sposi pur chi vuole. Ch'io pur mi sposerò quando un'altra Sandrina troverò.
Okay, so let's remind
Troverò.
ourselves, if we have a written accent in Italian, the accent of the long syllable of the word is on what syllable?
The troverò.
Good. So say for me, troverò.
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 Sposerò.
Now,
Sposerò.
let's count from Goda. Goda chi vuol godere. How many? Si sposi pur chi vuole. Ch'io pur mi sposerò. How? I thought you said there were 7. Because this is a kind of word called a, does anybody in this room know?
Was in class the other day, put in the chat, please, what's it called? Tronco piano is neutral. Which one is it?
Tronco, okay? So, when you truncate the line of 7 syllables, if you cut one off, how many do you have? Good, and in the line of 7 syllables, goda chi vuol godere, what's the last accent? On what syllable? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Next line. Si sposi pur chi vuole. Where's the last accent? Ch'io pur mi sposerò. Last accent is 6, and there's just not the 7th syllable because it's been cut off. Once in a while in librettos, you will see this, yeah? It's still a 7-syllable line, okay? Because you always count as if it has this piano, which literally means plain in this case, as if it has this plain ending, yeah? Chi vuole, okay? You always count last accent plus 1. Sometimes you have things where you have extra bum bum at the end, like fra poco me ricovero, daram, but it still takes the same amount of time, yeah? So, one more time, give us this, and stop it. Okay. You would think that years into this, we would not get flustered by Zoom, but here we are. So, podesta, one more time. Goda chi vuol godere.
Goda chi vuol godere, si sposi pur chi vuole.
Good. I'm just going to stop you. Remember, this is
Sì.
si.
Sì, yeah. Okay.
Si, è vero.
Si sposi pur chi vuole. Ch'io pur mi sposerò.
Ch'io pur mi sposerò.
Ch'io pur mi sposerò quando un'altra Sandrina troverò.
Don't stop here. Quando un'altra Sandrina troverò.
Quando un'altra Sandrina troverò.
Good. Let's count. Quando un'altra Sandrina troverò. So how many is it? 10 plus 1. It's an 11-syllable line. All right, Sandrina.
Sarà memore ognora in ogni stato della vostra bontà, del vostro cuore, la finta giardiniera per amore.
Good. I'm going to look up because I want to be 100% sure. Memore. So, because I know the word immemore. So if we go back here, this is an interesting thing that happens. Remember, no two accents can be beside each other. Okay? When Sarah is at its house watching TV, what's the long syllable of Sarah? The last one. Don't whisper to me, help them. Sarah, and then what is this word? Memore, right? Now, what happens is that this one says, no, you can't have this accent. You're now sarà memore ognora in ogni stato. Okay?
Put the other way around as well.
Sarà memore ognora.
Sarà memoria ognora or sarà memoria ognora?
Sara is Sara, Fara, da, those often get switched around more than the important words. We can look tomorrow when we look at the music and see what happens. Sarà memoria ognora, it could be either one. In ogni stato della vostra bontà, del vostro cuore, la finta giardiniera per amore. So we've gone through the poem and we felt the feet of the poem. Remind me, recit is in what kind of form? It's called versi. Versi what? Sciolti. How do you spell it? S-C-I-O-L-T-I. The thing where the vowels combine between words is called Sinalefe, and it's spelled with the F in Italian. We're only on step 2. So number 3, translation. Basically, what we say is number 1, translate every word you think you know, right? So it is so tempting to go to Dropbox, you know, the secret Dropbox link that everyone has with every Nico Castell in it and this and that and the other. And like, can you just, you know, print this for me and print it out? And then you don't, but it is in looking up things like memore, I will not forget that now, right? Because I took the time, especially I took the time in public to do it, right? So if you give yourself a chance to really find your bearings for yourself in online resources or with a physical dictionary, there's so much that you're able to use, right? So number 1, translate every word you think you know, right? Sometimes you might be wrong, right? Sometimes people see face in Italian. A face is a light, right? Or a flame, but it looks like face. So people think it's faccia or face. No, not true, but I would rather you think it's something than not try at all. Number 2, use dictionary and context clues. This is a great website, word reference, yeah? So if I want to find out what seccare means, I just type it in here, yeah? Or Adina says, l'usata seccatura. Every once in a while, you won't find things on here. You can use Wiktionary, which is a good source, the Wikipedia, the thing. You can also use a website called Treccani, which is all in Italian if you really want to find some old, sometimes you'll just find something that doesn't really totally make sense. And you'll need to do it in here, but just be brave. So luckily we don't have to use that today. Number 3, phone a friend, ask for help. I love when people ask me, can you help me with this translation? Because it at least means you're trying, right? So bella pal, phone a friend. Only sometimes can it be Nico Castell. You know, one of the singers at Cape Town Opera is doing some Cavalli thing for which there is no Nico Castell. So she's like, can you help me? Absolutely. So what I suggest you do is make either on your computer or wherever, here's the libretto. And if I go, okay, I know the word, I'm not going to go through the whole thing right now, but I know ma means but, nipote Sounds like nephew, but we have mia cara. So it's my niece, but my dear niece. We just looked up seccare.
Nice.
Thank you. I can't type. So, non mi seccate più. Don't bother me anymore. I was waiting for you. Anga. Che posso farvi? What can I do for you? Nello stato presente, in the present moment, yeah? Signori allegramente, my lords. Allegramente means joyfully, happily. Son are guariti. Anybody know guarito? Healed. Li pazzi. Di malmensa. The crazies. E appena, and as soon as. Son in senno is like your sanity. As they came back to their senses, they got married in peace and happiness. Yeah, so we don't have to go on forever. However, I do want to challenge you right here. We have che dicio tradimento. How many syllables? You see how it keeps going and this is indented across the line? Then what do we have here? Oh, che gran sorte. Oops. But che dicio tradimento, oh, che gran sorte is 11. So this is just supposed to be indented over here, yeah? So we do our translation. Number 4, refining diction. So every vowel in Italian at this point, there have been many books written, there have been whatever. So the thing about Italian is that it is a dialect-driven language with the way people speak it when they're not being watched, you know? But just like if you want to read the news or be on the radio, if you have a very strong accent, that doesn't really work, yeah? So here, you know, we laugh about the people in Pretoria that pratano le mon, le po, and like a very strong accent. No, you want to have, and especially as people who maybe don't speak Italian or don't live in Italy, if we're presenting classic theater, we want to have a classic accent. So in lyric Italian at this point, yeah, what is considered the most refined is that every vowel is closed until it's open for some reason. So that means every word has how many stressed syllables? 1. So that vowel can be open, okay? So for example, technically, okay, you have the word bello, which means beautiful, that vowel's open, right? Bello. But if you have bellissimo, the vowel gets closed, right? Now, obviously, people know it is bello, and so they say bello, bellissimo, instead of bellissimo. They know the number is 9, but 90. So you have the O at the beginning that gets closed, but they know it's 99, okay? So, yeah.
Sorry, can you just, I mean, for some of the people here who hadn't had languages, just explain what you mean with open and closed.
So I do not mean closed throat. I definitely don't mean closed heart. So if you hear the difference between, so there are 7 vowels in Italian, right? The 5 letters that we have, A, E, I, O, U, what does A make? Or sorry, A, what does A make? A. What does E make? Sorry, I'm meaning I. I'm between 9 languages. So the letter A in English sounds like what in Italian? The letter I in English sounds like what in Italian? E. The letter U in English sounds like what in Italian? Ooh. Now, O and E can either be O, open O, everybody say O, Or closed O. Like io sono, say io sono. And I'll say troverò. So you hear troverò is two different vowel sounds, yeah? Also, E's can either be open E, as in Louis or memore has an open E, say memore. But memore is closed at the end, yeah? So that happens in German as well, in French. Child, lively, crazy, return, what are you saying?
Oh, Rachel was translating.
Oh, heavenly. People, you know, sometimes you read the chat and you're like, what has been going on in my... So, every vowel is closed until proven open. So that means words like perché, both closed. Per me, te, se, all closed, yeah? Per me, yeah? Today we have io vedo in the masterclass, which is closed, yeah? Single and double consonants. People emphasize the double consonants and their importance in Italian, but it is often the single ones that are mispronounced, right? And phrasal doubling. So there are resources on the website for specifics and all of that. Let's quickly go through and work on a little bit of refining this diction, yeah? So, Troy, take us off.
Ma nipote, mia cara, non mi seccate più, che
Good.
posso farvi.
So if I want to find out if nipote, the stress syllable is what vowel? O, right, but I need to know if it's open or closed. So I can go here. It'll give me the IPA. Nipote tells me if it's open, yeah? Or it's closed, sorry. So say for me, ma nipote mia cara.
Ma nipote mia cara.
Good. And how are we going to make sure there's really one T? So the tongue going to make the T goes to T and returns from the T in one motion. So say nipote, everybody. Nipote. Now, Troy.
Ma nipote.
Ooh, it's here, nipote. If you start moving your tongue somewhere in that vowel, I'm going to hear a double T instead of ma nipote.
Ma nipote.
Moo. So at the second you want to say T, say more O. Ma nipote.
Ma nipote.
Better, yeah? Just say O, to.
O, to. O,
Even simpler. O, to.
O, to. O, to.
Ma nipote.
Ma nipote.
Better. Ma nipote mia cara.
Ma nipote mia cara.
Keep going.
Non mi seccate più.
Good, but give me two C's. Seccate.
Seccate più.
Non mi seccate più.
Non mi seccate più.
Good, keep going.
Che posso farvi.
Good, so when you have a double consonant, what does it do to the previous vowel? It shortens it. Che posso.
Che posso.
Che posso farvi.
Che posso farvi.
I still hear che posso instead of che posso, short vowel.
Che posso. Che posso.
There you go. Che posso farvi.
Che posso farvi.
Keep going.
Nello stato presente.
Good. Nello stato presente.
Nello stato presente.
Good, but one T in stato.
Stato.
Okay, my friend Rochelle is coming to Michigan very soon. She's going to be on you about these single consonants, okay?
Yes.
Nardo.
Ok. Signori allegramente. Son guariti li pazzi.
Good. How many T's are in the word guariti?
One T. So
say-
guariti.
Ooh.
Guariti.
Guariti.
Guariti. Oh, it's stressing. Guariti li pazzi.
Son guariti li pazzi.
Son guariti li pazzi.
There you go. You have to get out of your kind of like shell of what your mouth really feels like speaking whatever languages you speak other than Italian, right? Son guariti di pazzi.
Son guariti li pazzi.
Good.
E appena sono...
Appena.
E appena...
E appena.
E appena...
Yeah.
E appena...
Well, that's still two ends. Watch me. Appena.
Appena...
So you go appena.
Oh,
So appena.
Appena.
Better.
Oh, so e appena.
E appena sono in senno.
E appena sono in senno, ritornati, che in pace e in allegria.
This is a long syllable. Che in pace.
Okay. Che in pace e in allegria si sono sposati. Yeah.
Che dici? Foresta.
Yeah. Che dici?
O tradimento.
Oh, che gran sorte.
Mi son
Good. Can you give me
tolta
two G's here? O che gran sorte. It's phrasal doubling.
Oh, che gran sorte.
Good.
mi son tolta una spina.
So if I look up tolta, it's from the verb togliere, which has an open O. So this stays open. Mi son tolta una spina.
Mi son tolta una spina.
Good. Ecco la mia sposina, ecco la mia violante. Good. Let's just deal with that much for now. So imagine that we sprinkled some fairy dust, put it in the oven, and 20 minutes later we have perfect Italian. Okay? So it's so good being on a cooking show. Sto. Okay? Okay. So step 5, pacing in dynamics. So nothing is worse than something that just drones on at one speed for a very long time because it sounds like the person has either no interest or no clue about the subject or the story, right? So when we get excited about things, maybe we speak louder or faster, or maybe if I really want to make sure you're paying attention, I draw you into me with pauses, yeah? So a lot of times we want to find this variety of speed and volume. I suffered through Don Giovanni one time many years ago where it was clear that the only coaching that was given to the recitative was for it to go as fast as possible so that people could go home, right? But when is the story told in an opera? In the recitative, yeah? So it's like, obviously there's no emotion, there's no pacing, this story isn't really happening, right? So we want a variety of speed and volume. Presentational recit happens a lot in operas where, say, you're the only character on stage and we don't know where you are until you tell us. So if Romeo comes out and says, here is the tomb, yeah? In this kind of, I'm setting the scene, I'm speaking very broadly. You often see longer notes written in the score, like whole notes in the recit and stuff, where basically you're setting the scene instead of creating a dialogue, right? So this recit that we're studying, is it presentational or conversational? Conversational, right? Because you see people going, yeah? So, however, it does have these little speeches in it, right? In which people explain what they've done or what is going to happen. And within those speeches, you can make your own choices about where those spots are to make specific choices. For example, if I were Sandrina, so come c'è ogni dubbio, right? Like, let there be no doubt, dell'esser mio cangiai con Roberto. So she's explaining what she's done. She's changed, she's pretended to be, they've changed, I did not study the plot of Finta Giardiniera, I will one day, but basically they've switched, right? She switched with her servant, both name and status. So, dell'esser mio cangiai con Roberto, mio servo, e nome è stato. And this is something that happens in Italian where if you want to say both this and that, you say and name and status. Everybody say in nome stato.
In nome stato.
And because of phrasal doubling, this causes the N to double and then the S to double. So you want to set up the scene where you're like, c'è ogni dubbio dell'esser mio candrai con Roberto, mio servo, with Robert, my servant, con Roberto, mio servo, in nome stato, ne voli mai svelarmi, I did not ever want to reveal myself, sol per far col mio sposo una dolce vendetta, only to get vengeance on my spouse. So when you're doing this, you can use the grouping of the words and the speed at which you say them, and also the dynamic at which you sing them to either draw in the audience, to excite the audience, to basically tell this story in an exciting way. Like sometimes I'll ask people to read this like they're reading a book to a kid, yeah? Because anytime we read a book to a kid, you make this story interesting and you do voices and you try to engage them, right? So it's kind of that kind of heightened theatricality that we need in the recitative. So Garcia talks about sung recitative and spoken recitative. Do not be bamboozled, bewitched, bewildered, any of the above. It is not, there is no such thing as just off the voice singing of like, che maledetta vita il fa la cameriera, whatever, to sing off the voice. No, recit is all sung. And if you sprechstimme your way through recitative, you will be tired, right? Because if you're constantly using half your voice and singing with air through the folds, it's going to get tired more than if you just kind of sing through it, yeah? Especially if you sing with it with a variety of dynamics and pacing. So that when Garcia talks about sung or spoken, he's talking about accompagnato, which is where the orchestra plays in the recitative, or secco, just continuo. Recitatives never sung off the voice or so fast that it means nothing. You don't want to do something in a way that doesn't tell the story. Now, number 6, memorize the recitative before looking at the pitches if you can. Why? A lot of surviving operas that we've had were published for years and years and years and still are, either with recitatives not by, for example, Rossini himself, or just without the recitatives entirely, because the singers knew the style and they would just sing from one chord to the other, and there were certain formulas that they would follow. So the idea of like having to study like, oh, I have to learn Susanna, giunse al fin il momento, no, I need to sing the portatura, mento che godrò senza fa, oh no, another portatura, in braccio al lido, to kind of put it together, that didn't exist, right? So obviously, if you memorize the text, you already have half of what you're doing taken care of. So I know, giunse al fin il momento che godrò senza affanno in braccio al lido mio, okay, I have this chord. What is the basic contour of the melody? There's only so many pitches that you can possibly be singing, right? So all the people that we know that have done this, that have studied and gone as far as to memorize it, before they ever look at the score, have found it extremely beneficial, yeah? If you're preparing a role, before you translate, before you do all this, and before you memorize, do go through the score and make sure that things didn't change, yeah? Every once in a while, composers will substitute words from the libretto, but because there is such a respect for this document, right, and things like this, they didn't change them, you know? They didn't go back and erase the words that were in the libretto, yeah? They would issue the libretto as was written, yeah? Now, you also see performance librettos where it will be, this is it, whatever opera, as it was sung at this performance. One of the interesting ones is there's Così from London, where instead of singing Come Scoglio, the Fiordiligi aria, she sings the recit, the same recit, and then sings Porgi Amor, which is the Countess's second act aria from Nozze di Figaro. So, yes, Dave says they did that all the time in the 19th century, where they would sub out arias. So do go through and make sure that you don't have any whoopsie surprises, yeah? So let's review these 6 steps. And tomorrow is how to take your libretto study and apply it to the score. So number 1, make sure you have a good libretto. If it all looks like, I don't know, a storybook, if it looks like Alice in Wonderland, that's not going to work. It needs to look like poetry, yeah? So number 2, go through and find your poetica meter, right? Let's review. What's it called? Versi sciolti, and it is free of what? Free of rhyme, but not free of meter. Every verse, it's called a verso, is a line of poetry. Every line of poetry has either 7 or 11 syllables. From Handel through Verdi, okay? If you look at Falstaff, if you look at complicated Verdi operas, it's written in this form, okay? Number 3, translate, do it yourself. Amen, end of sermon. Number 4, use resources to look up diction. Now, this site is good for that. I'm going to show you another site, DP Online, the best site they've taken away. I'm very mad about it. But what this is good for, now turn your brains on, turn your ears on for a second. If you look up the word ascoltare, if I have to say ascolto, like I'm listening, or ascolta, signore ascolta, okay? Ascoltare, if you look it up in the dictionary, it's not going to be in here because why? It can only be pronounced one way because the long syllable is what? The long syllable of ascoltare is right? Ascoltare. So, but if I have ascolto, it will tell me that it's closed, right? That is not going to be in the dictionary because the conjugated forms of the verbs are not in the dictionary. Only this. There used to be a different website that was truly amazing, but I think the publishers of the book took the web form offline. Yeah. So if you need to know like vieni or viene, it'll tell you the first one is always the best. Now this is where it says, okay, in this area, in this area, in this area, they say different things, right? So, but just ignore this. No, bad. Unless you've lived there for like, I don't know, at least a year. So number 5, don't do it all one speed. Don't do it all one volume. But please, for the Lord's sake, in his holy name, do not sing it off the voice or so soft that it cannot be heard, right? Step 6, memorize. Okay, good. I'm looking forward to tomorrow where Rochelle will talk about how to put all these words to music.
Derek, before you go, since the MSU students are here and college students, would you just quickly go to look up to and show them where free resources is, because one of them very important things they need is tracing document sheets. So you go to good job.
Bravi! Bravi!
At the top of that page, you will see the link. You can click to join the Sunday. So there on the top there, you can click there. Sunday 9 o'clock at night. You can listen with us. Then, if you scroll down, you will see 3 resources for singers. You can click on that thing and you look for it. There's also some other stuff, including the listen to legato thing that we didn't listen to today. Listen to registration, you can hear all of that stuff. There are correlative exercises and so on.
Please use the website.
Please use the website.
The hours of my life that
spend so much time on it, and people are like, can you please send me that? I'm like, it's on the website. Okay, there are also the summaries of the recitative studies.
this is what I use today. This is tomorrow.
We'll use that. And then when you get to Italian, here you will find the phrasal doubling cheat sheet in the Lord's name, and please print that thing out, put it in the front of your book. MSU, I am coming for you. You have got to study your phrasal doubling. Yeah? There are not enough hours in the day for me to teach it to you. Like, you have to study as hard as you can, okay? I'll work as hard as I can, but you have about a week or 10 days before I get there. Get on it, my people.
Okay. All right, everybody.
Okay, see you tomorrow.
I love you long. I love you strong. Bye. End.